Tim Smith. I'm the project coordinator for the Western Republican River Riparian Improvement Project. I'd like to visit with you today about eastern red cedar and what the Southwest Weed Management Area is doing to try and combat eastern red cedar in the Republican River Valley. Let's have a little review of eastern red cedar first.
Eastern red cedar isn't a cedar at all. It's actually a species of juniper. It's the most common conifer in the eastern half of the United States. In southwest Nebraska, eastern red cedar can reach heights of 40 feet. It has both a male and a female tree, and the female is readily distinguishable by the presence of blue berries. It was and still is widely planted for shelter belts and ornamental uses, and it is rapidly spread by birds throughout its range. Eastern red cedar is easily controlled by periodic fires, as it is highly susceptible to fire damage, and this was once the primary limiting factor on red cedar populations. Eastern red cedar wasn't much of a problem in Nebraska until the advent of modern fire suppression. Without the controlling influence of fire, eastern red cedar thrives, and it will eventually dominate prairie and forest vegetation.
This is what eastern red cedar can do when it's left alone. I don't know if this camera shot will do this justice, but the stem count in here is at least 5,000 red cedars an acre, at least. That many red cedars causes problems. Now, I've been hiking up and down this Republican River for over a quarter century, and I've witnessed firsthand a lot of the changes that have occurred in the vegetation along the river. And my opinion of red cedar is really starting to change. In that time, I've seen these communities of red cedar grow up and absolutely choke out everything else. They can choke out Russian olive. They can choke out salt cedar. I've never seen anything like it. I'm not so sure that red cedar isn't the biggest problem we face.
Red cedars pose a problem on many different levels. It goes without saying that when red cedar populations reach these types of numbers, that you experience a serious degradation of the riparian habitat. Red cedars will use every bit of the available resources to the detriment of more desirable plant communities. The losses in carrying capacity, land value, soil moisture, and quality wildlife habitat can be staggering. Can you imagine a fire in this? And this doesn't begin to scratch the surface of why red cedars are bad. There are plenty more reasons to remove these invasive trees.
Now, I don't know if you can see behind me here or not, but this is another excellent reason to remove eastern red cedar. Not only does eastern red cedar take up all the space, the sunlight, the water, and the nutrients, they also have some type of an allelopathic or toxic effect on the soil where they've been growing for any length of time. If you can see under these cedar trees here, absolutely nothing is growing. And we're finding out as we remove eastern red cedars that it takes a long time before any plants, native grasses, forbs, go in and recolonize those spots where we've taken those cedars out. And the only cure for that is just time and rain to dilute those chemicals, whatever it is that cedar is exuding into the soil. Now, here's another reason why eastern red cedars are so bad. More than any other invasive species, eastern red cedars have the ability to completely choke out any other trees or woody competitors. Now, those big cottonwoods right there are growing right in the middle of those eastern red cedars. Those eastern red cedars are out competing them for their available resources, and eventually they'll contribute to the death of those cottonwoods.
There are many different methods of controlling red cedar. These range all the way from heavy machinery down to small hand tools.
One of the easiest and most cost-effective ways you can control red cedar is just carry a little pair of pruners or hedge loppers like this with you. when you see one of these small cedar trees, just get out and cut it off. Now, a red cedar won't grow from a cut stump, so this tree is done. Once cedars get like these trees are behind me, it becomes very expensive to deal with them.
Well, sometimes big jobs take big tools, and this was turning out to be a real big job. Here are a couple of the real big tools that we used on this job. The machines that we liked the most employed a huge grinder called a forestry head. This particular machine is called a carbide cutter, and it is mounted on a Caterpillar skid steer. These types of machines had several advantages. For one, there was no need to remove any felled trees. This eliminated the need for a second machine, as well as saved wear and tear on the native grassland. A big bonus was that these types of machines returned all of the tree's organic matter to the adjacent soil. Any organic matter that can be returned to these often sandy riparian soils is a huge plus. You can see that when this carbide cutter finishes with this cedar, that there is literally nothing left but a little pile of mulch. We were also really impressed with the speed of these units. If you could keep these machines in those 10-foot or shorter cedars, they were really effective at covering large areas of ground in very short periods of time. Now don't blink or you'll miss it. This was the weapon of choice when larger cedars were encountered. This is called a turbo saw. It is simply a large, powerful circular saw that is mounted again on the front of a cat skid steer. When these machines were on the job, playtime was over. They could handle thick brush as well as very large trees, and they also were very fast. The only downside to the turbo saw was the fact that you had to deal with fallen trees. These trees were simply placed in stacks outside of the river channel, and at the present time, this is our only option for disposal of these piles.
Just remember, where red cedar goes, nothing else grows. If you're having a problem with red cedar, I would urge you to contact your county weed superintendent or the appropriate local agency. They can give you expert advice on how to control eastern red cedar, and they can guide you to sources of assistance.